Hi, how are you? Or, as I'm going to talk about identity, I could say, who are you? What's your story? When people meet for the first time, they start sharing stories when they want to know each other. They share stories about their lives, about their childhood, about school, about your loves, about your convictions, your ideology, your religion, anything. It is the stories that shape our lives. It's the stories that we share that define our identities. Now, here's such a story. Imagine, it was 1994, and I was together with an anthropologist at MSF. I was involved with MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders in Amsterdam. And we decided to design a psychosocial support program for people in humanitarian crises, especially in refugee camps. And in the same year, in 1994, in a small country in the Great Lake region in Africa, there was a terrible massacre. In a, let's say, 100 days period, a genocidal period, some 800,000 people were killed. And a huge refugee flow started to build up. Like 1.5 million people fled the country, either to the east, which was the eastern border was with Tanzania, and the western border was with the then Zaire, now called Democratic Republic of Congo. And of course, huge refugee camps arose there. And we decided in Amsterdam that that might be an opportunity to pilot our just designed psychosocial support programs. So off some teams went, small expatriate teams with psychologists and anthropologists to start working there. They recruited local staff to work with. And these people were actually refugees themselves, residing in the camps and now working for the program. And after some 3 or 4 months, this anthropologist and I in Amsterdam decided to go and have a look how things went, just to monitor and supervise. And we went to the Tanzanian side in a small village called Ngara, just across the border with Rwanda. And when we arrived late night, it was a short night because the next morning we had to depart to the camp. The camp was called Benako, and it was a huge camp. Some 450,000 people lived there in the beginning. And to get there, you had to go a long way because it was a very bumpy road, and the long time that you had to wait in line for this ferry that could only carry like 3 or 4 of these wide four-wheel drive cars that NGOs used to use. And of course, there was a lot of NGOs going to work there. So you had to stand in line for an hour to cross this river. And then, upon arrival in the camp, we were, of course, received and welcomed by our expert team. And then we had to make a presentation for the local staff that was gathered there in a circle. And, of course, we said, hello, thank you very much for all the work that you've done so far, things like that. And then it was time for questions. And the first question, I expected there to be a question like, how is the other programs going in the other camps, and does MSF do more kind of things, or things like that. But the first question that came surprised me. It was directed to me, and it went like, would you have an explanation for the difference in experience that Western people have of individuality as compared to non-Western people? And this was in French, and I had to reply in French, and I found it difficult enough already. So it surprised me, but what struck me more is that I caught myself having this prejudgment about refugees. I did not expect a sophisticated and intellectual question like that at all. I thought this man, this person, living in this huge refugee camp, had kind of an anonymity around him. And now suddenly, he was someone. he had a story by himself, of course. He had his background, and he showed off this background. So when I would say, hello, who are you? He would say, of course, I'm a refugee, but I am me. I have my story. I have my background. And I completely neglected that. I denied that, apparently, which is surprising. And I was trapped by that. Now imagine, I would ask you to stand up and go home, and you would be picked up within an hour. And so I would ask you to grab all the stuff that you find relevant, but it should have to be, you should have been able to carry it in one bag. And then you would move to a huge crowd, and they would take you, and you would travel like 3 days or so, and then you would be brought somewhere, and then after, with this whole crowd, you would have to walk for days and days, not knowing where you go, not knowing what to expect. And then you would arrive somewhere, and you wouldn't know the country, you wouldn't know the language, you wouldn't be familiar with the food, with the weather, things like that, and you would not know what would happen next day, and also not in the near future. What would be left of what you consider your own identity? What would be left of what you consider as, this is me, this is what I can offer to the world, this is my capacities, my competencies? It would not be known by your surrounding. It would not be applicable there. You would be a no one. Like this man. He is apparently on the road. He's a refugee. What is he, apart from being a refugee? Is he a farmer? Is he a lawyer? Is he an engineer? You don't know. But he could be anything and everything. So, if you would ask him, who are you? He could answer, I am a refugee. But he could also answer, I am me, of course. So me is the stories that you can tell about yourself. It's the things that you have done, it's your competencies, it's your talents, and it's more. Now, what is it more? I'd like to introduce you to my great friend. This is Yoko. It's my cuddly toy, it's my doll, and Yoko lives with me already all the times that I have lived. And he's still in the kitchen of our family house on a shelf watching over me. But he came into my life when my grandmother, when I was a very young kid, sent it to where I lived with my family in Indonesia. My grandmother sent it to Indonesia from Holland. And Yoko is what you call a doll, of course, and what psychologists call a comfort object. And they also call it a transitional object. Now, this is a difficult name. I'll put Yoko back again. Oh, he deserves to go viral. Of course, this object is comforting for children. We all have this kind of objects, right? You have your blanket or you have your doll with you, and you carry it with you through your toddler times, and then it gets lost mostly. And it serves to comfort you. But why is it called a transitional object? It helps you to go through a transition. That is what psychoanalysts' theory says. And what is the transition then? Well, you start being one with, let's say, your mother or your primary caretaker. You are an enlengthment of your mother. And she is an enlengthment of you. You have complete control. When you cry, when you move, she'll be there. She'll comfort you, she will feed you, she will give you warmth. But there comes a time, pretty soon, that she doesn't do that every time. She will let you wait a while. And this is the first time that you have to, let's say, bear the fact that she is not under your complete control. She is not an enlengthment anymore of you. You have to start realizing that you are a different identity. But it is frustrating because you want her, you want the complete control. And this toy, this doll, helps you to bear this frustration. And this toy helps you to become an identity of your own. Because you can also manipulate this toy. It's under your complete control. Instead of your primary caretaker, you have this doll. You can be mad, you can manipulate this person, this doll, and still it can comfort you. Now the funny thing is that also in adult life, we have these kind of phenomena that are similar. Like when you are in great distress, and when you are frustrated by someone or even humiliated, you need some place in your mind, in your soul, where you find this comfort, this kind of comfort. And we call it, in psychoanalytical lingo, we call that the transitional zone. That is where you have these fantasies. Oh, they should know. If the opportunity will be there, I will show how much power I have, how much competent I am, how much I'm lovable. Things like that. Somewhere in your mind you have these comfort and fantasies of how things will, in the end, or once, be all right. Even if things are completely a mess, somewhere in the back of your mind, in the transitional zone, there is these comforting fantasies, illusions. And you're not so eager to share these. You don't test it to reality, but it is there. And you're sometimes not aware of it, but it is there. So, identity is not only stories, it's not only reality, it's also these fantasies. And it is even more. Identity, there's a third component. There's also your surrounding. But how does that relate to reality, to identity? Your surrounding is like the social surrounding that you have, like your friends, or your colleagues, or your family, because they recognize who you are. For them, you are a recognizable, an acknowledged identity. And so if they would not be there, there would be nothing to be identified. You, for them, I are an identity. And you have a certain role for them. You are the loved one, or you are the parent of children, or you are, like me, a professional with a team, treating clients, things like that. So you need your surroundings to feel your identity. You are more or less through the other. So now we have three components. There's the reality, the stories that you can tell. There's these fantasies, and there is the others that you need. I have a client. Recently he came to us. He's called Ahmed. He has been a leader, a representative of a group of people coming to our country which did not get a residence permit. And they were quite activists, they were quite active in requiring that they would be taken care of, like give them housing, give them food, give them a residence permit. And he was their frontman. He was quite popular in that, and he went into the media and things like that. Now this man, he received his residence permit, and he lives in a house, and when he so more or less lost this role as being an activist, as being the representative of this group, he suddenly started to have mental problems. Now he has his nightmares. Now he shows how he has been traumatized before he came to our country, the reason why he fled his country. So this shows how this man more or less lost his identity that was given to him by his social role. We all need it. We all need people around us that give us social roles, that acknowledge our identities, and this is our capital. You belong to a certain group. You belong to certain groups even. You all belong to this community here. I have my professional group. I have my clients. I have my family. And you all have groups like that. And you need that. You need that belonging. You need that common trust. You need the shared values. And you need to be acknowledged and recognized by the other. This is the capital that everyone needs. And it's part of your identity. Now, this whole group of refugees that has come to Europe, they cause problems, we think. They cause problems, and if you look at it from the perspective of social capital, the problem has both sides. It has two sides. Here is our societies, and there is commotion, there is trouble, there is unrest in our societies, because we think our social capital, by these groups that come to our villages and things like that, are threatened. So our social capital is threatened by them. They don't share the values that we have. We don't trust them yet. They never contribute to the institutions that we have. They are not part of our society. Now, the refugees, on the other hand, they lost a lot of social capital. Everything that was their social surrounding was left behind. They don't have a role. No one acknowledges them. No one knows what is their capacities. No one knows what they can do. So here might be a solution. If you think about taking care of how your society is being built up, if you think about how refugees can be taken care of course you take care of their mental state by, for instance, providing psychotherapy when they're traumatized or things like that. But then still, they are sitting there in these stupid asylum seeker centers, maybe for months or for years, idling, not knowing anyone yet from the host society, not being capable of showing what is their talents, what is their competencies, not showing, not sharing their stories. So if I would be a refugee, yes, please listen to my stories. I'm an identity also. I have something to offer. And of course I have my fantasies of how things could be. But please also connect me to your society. I am me, I am through you. Please connect me. Thank you.